Hello and welcome back to Mindset Matters. My name is Victoria. I'm very excited to be with you today. I know I say that every time, but I really get so excited recording these. So I hope that you are doing well wherever you are. It's been a hot minute. I had knee surgery the other week, and I'll be honest, I think I under anticipated the amount of rest that would be required for having surgery done. Which, thinking back, like, obviously you had part of your body cut into and fixed, and that's a whole healing process. So healing is going well. I am able to walk better, still with crutches, but a lot less pain. And thank you to anyone who reached out with well wishes. And so because of this, I missed a couple weeks of the podcast, but I'm really hoping to get back into a regular Monday drop schedule. Consistency is something that's so important to me, and I think consistency over motivation is a big one, and I've talked about that before. I think I've made a whole episode on that if you are interested, but showing up, being consistent with whatever you're working on is so important. So just a reminder, whatever you're working on, make sure you show up, and even if you don't feel motivated, sometimes you got to do it anyways. So with that said, we are jumping into today. Today we are talking about being selfish. And someone actually commented, I had made a TikTok a few weeks ago asking for some ideas. And someone said, you should talk about being selfish because I think it can be a good thing. And I love that. So thank you if you reached out with that comment. So let me get my phone out. I have some ideas I want to run through as we jump into today. I feel like I haven't done this in so long. Oh my gosh. Okay. So being selfish. So I want to look at what does it mean to be selfish? When is it okay to be selfish? So kind of the positive and negative sides. When is it not okay to be selfish? Or when can it be a bad thing, I guess, to be selfish? Why I believe there are certain aspects of your life where you should be selfish. And also I would add certain stages of life where you should be selfish. And we're also going to explore the ego. I've been reading a lot about the ego lately. There's a book in particular I'm going to reference that I've been reading. And I think the ego is a whole other topic to do a deep dive in, but I think just exploring your ego and selfishness can be interesting. So that's what we're jumping into. Let's get straight to it. First on my list is my pros/yes to selfish. When should you be selfish? I think, first of all, when you're making decisions that really only affect you, the direction that you are taking your life, I think it's important to be selfish. And what I mean by that is it should be your decision. What school you want to go to, what program you want to take, what job you want. At the end of the day, there's influences all around us and people who are always going to have something to say about our choices. This really makes me think of family influence. And I know parents can have a big influence in our decisions academically, but at the end of the day, you do not want to be stuck in a job you hate. You don't want to be stuck in a situation you're unhappy in. So being selfish to me means, making decisions about your life for you because it's your life, right? And at that point, they're not decisions that are harming other people. They're decisions that are, again, really just affecting you at the end of the day. I guess I kind of skipped over to what does it actually mean to be selfish? Obviously selfish has a more negative connotation, and I think selfishness really is about making a choice that is for yourself or that benefits you. Actually, I want to look up the definition. So this is definitely a negative connotation. Selfish, adjective of a person, action, or motive lacking consideration for others, concerned chiefly with one's own personal profit or pleasure. Yeah. And in the example I just gave with going to school or picking your job or your, career path, absolutely you should be selfish. why do you need to consider other people in that decision? I don't think you do. So, concerned chiefly with one's own personal profit or pleasure. Yeah, so I think when there's a situation that's not harming other people, it really doesn't affect others at the end of the day. It might hurt their feelings that you don't want to go to the school they want for you, but that's not actually hurting them, right? So I think we should be selfish when we're making decisions that really only matter to us, because at the end of the day, it's not hurting anyone. Okay, so that I think is great. I like that definition. So another thing you should be selfish in my opinion, is like your hobbies or how you spend your time. You need to really be thinking about what things are going to make you happy and bring you joy in life. So if being selfish means every Tuesday night I go and play volleyball and that's my thing, and there's someone else who comes into my life and wants to hang out on Tuesday night, I'm going to be selfish and say, oh, sorry, like that's actually my time for volleyball. Like I'm not available then. So that to me is like prioritizing myself over someone else in the context of, I've already have this commitment. This is something that's important to me. So I think that is another example where it's okay to be selfish and say, look, I'm not available. So sorry, but not sorry. You don't have to justify yourself. Again, with hobbies, I mentioned like how you spend your time. If you are invited to a party and you're not interested and you feel guilty for not going, but you know that you have to wake up early the next day, I think it's okay to be selfish and say, look, I'm not able to attend this time. Depending on what it is, like if it's your very best friend, I would say still show up for a couple hours. Maybe you just don't stay out late, decide what that looks like for you. But I think it's okay to be selfish in the way that you choose to spend your time and decide that something is just not on your priority list right now. And another way I think it's okay to be selfish is in prioritizing moments of self-care. And I say moments of self-care because something I've realized this year or really learned is that self-care doesn't always look like a whole day of self-care, a whole Sunday where I'm dedicated just to relaxing and doing yoga and doing a facial and, washing my hair, doing a deep condition. Like those days are amazing, but I realized that self-care should be, in my opinion, incorporated every day in some way, shape, or form. And to me, that looks like little moments of self-care. So one example I could share with you of something that's maybe me being selfish when it comes to my self-care is at work this year, I've really prioritized eating by myself at lunch because I just like that 40 minutes of quiet and peace in between teaching. And so I'm not really involved in a ton of clubs that go on at lunch, which I don't know if that would be considered selfish, but in a way, it could be. It's like going back to that definition, lacking consideration for others. I prioritize me sitting alone at lunch and having quiet time, and that's not a time I call parents. That's not a time that I'm willing to work extra with students because that's my self-care time. So yeah, in a way it could be a little bit selfish, but again, that's like the time that I've allocated to my self-care and what's something that's really important to me. If there's an emergency, of course, I'm going to help out, or if there's something urgent that happened and I need to call a parent, sure. But in general, I take that time for myself to be a little bit selfish. And just to elaborate on self-care and moments of self-care, I found even just like taking a few deep breaths throughout the day, being very present, coming back to presence, waking up, if you will, right? When we wake up is like we realize that we're out of the present moment. So waking up, coming back to the present moment, and again, prioritizing kind of my grounding, that's another way that I practice self-care. And again, those are like little moments. Reading for 15 minutes instead of going on my phone. Okay. My shower. Like these little things can be considered self-care. Anyways, maybe not super related to being selfish, but I think part of selfishness is choosing yourself and choosing to do things that bring you joy. And again, sometimes creating space again for little moments of self-care is all you need. So let's think about when we should not be selfish. So the first point I have about selfishness, again, I want to go back to this definition because it says it really well. So, concerned chiefly with one's own personal profit or pleasure. So where should we not be only concerned about our own gain? Well, I would say in friendship or any sort of community-based thing, right now when we bring other people into the mix and things that actually directly affect other people, that's when we need to consider how selfishness can affect them. Not that I think you need to always make choices for other people, because then we become a people pleaser, or we can get into, again, doing everything for everyone else and not taking care of ourselves. However, we need to be considerate that other people are involved or other people are in the mix and their feelings matter and they're entitled to, their own opinions, etc. So when to not be selfish, when you are in some sort of position where either sharing is necessary, cooperation, maybe it's, thinking of school, it could be like a group project at work. You are you have to work with different types of people at work. Maybe you have a team, you have a kind of a project-based thing. Is it right to just be selfish and try to get away with doing the least work possible? No, not great. Another way you shouldn't be selfish is, I'm really thinking about friendships. I would hate for one of my friends to call me selfish. Like, I would really feel deeply hurt if at the end of the day, one of my friends saw me as selfish. Because that to me would mean that I'm not showing up for them, that I'm not, sacrificing certain things for them. Kind of going back to that like party example. If it's my best friend's birthday, I'm showing up. Unless I'm like super sick or something, I'm showing up to that birthday. Even if I don't feel like it, right? Because that to me is more important than that little selfish moment. And maybe what that looks like is, hey, I'm really not up for a late night. I have to get up early tomorrow, but I do want to come out for a little bit. Or maybe that means I'm coming out but not drinking, or whatever that is. But if it's my best friend's birthday, you best believe I'm showing up and I'm not choosing that moment to be selfish, Selfishness in friendships to me looks like someone who only shows up when it's convenient to them and only wants to do things that are fun to them, right? So if I'm with a friend and they want to try something new, or they're like, hey, will you come with me to that thing? Even if it's not something that is super interesting to me, I will likely be down to try it if that's something that's going to bring them joy. So I think that to me is like a give and take of like, yeah, I'm not here just to do things I want to do. I'm here to be your friend. I think friendship and selfishness can be tricky because at the end of the day, you want to be mindful of what energy you bring to the table. Am I showing up for the people in my life? Would I want to be my own friend? And I think these are important questions to explore because although being selfish, I think, can be okay sometimes, and needing to take a day, if you had plans and you have to cancel because you're just feeling awful, chances are, the good friends in your life will understand. But if you're canceling on someone constantly, then yeah, they're probably going to see you as selfish or see you as someone who doesn't really care about them. So I think it's important to be reflective and always ask ourselves, how are we showing up for the people in our lives? Because you should be able to prioritize yourself. But at the end of the day, what makes a good friend? Not someone who's overly selfish. So in terms of selfishness, I would say we should also not be selfish in our partnerships, okay, relationships. I think the most happy relationships are the ones where we hear people are just selfless and they just give and they are so loving to their partner and they show up for that person. And, I think that that's amazing. And that's something that we should all strive for, is wanting to be there for someone. And being in a committed partnership means, you do have to make sacrifices sometimes, and it's not all about you. And you cannot choose to be selfish all the time. I still think there's moments for selfishness and there's room for it. But again, in a partnership, committed relationship, friendship, we should be thinking about other people's feelings when we make decisions and thinking about how our decisions affect other people. Another point I wrote down about when not to be selfish is if your decision is going to cause harm to someone else. And I think this can be tricky too, because let's say you're talking about like a breakup. If I break up with someone, is that going to cause them harm? Potentially, emotionally, they're going to be upset, but it's not harming them to a point where like it's not natural to feel those feelings. You know what I mean? Right? Like I'm not making a decision that's going to physically harm someone else or that's going to cause serious psychological damage, right? I can't even think of an example right now, but you know what I'm talking about, like the bigger things that are like against the law or going to cause someone serious damage. Okay, let's avoid doing those things for our own pleasure. If it's necessary, if you're in an abusive relationship and you need to get out, then yeah, be selfish, do what you got to do to escape that. But I think in general, thinking about, okay, how are my actions going to affect others? Or do my actions affect others to a point where I'm hurting them unnecessarily, right? Because sometimes we have to be selfish and we have to make a decision for our own safety. I want to snowball off of what I just said about relationships, right? I talked about, okay, being in a committed partnership with someone, there are sacrifices that need to be made. Thinking about my parents, right, or other relationships that I've seen, it's not just one person gets to do whatever they want all the time. There is sacrifice and there is compromise and there is a level of commitment and decision making with that other person, right? So I think when is a stage of life to be more selfish? When you're single. I think when you're single, you should be the most selfish because you should be exploring what do you feel passionate about, what brings you joy. When you're single, you have so much time and space to explore things about yourself, and you don't have to really worry about another person in that context. So I think if you are still single, it's a great time to really lean into, okay, what do I love? Let's be selfish. Let's make some fun, crazy decisions that are all about me. Let's go travel. Let's go try this new thing. I don't have to ask permission from anyone, right? So when you're in that space, that's the time to do it. And that's the time to be selfish. And for me, I feel like I had to actively tell myself, okay, I'm being selfish now. And this is my time where I don't even want to talk to anyone. I don't want to date at all. I just want to be selfish and I just want to focus on myself. And I think that time of my life was like the most growth for me, was when I made the conscious choice to like really lean into myself and my own desires and say, like, kind of like forget everyone else in a way. Not completely forget everyone else, but you know what I mean, where I'm not prioritizing other people above me. So I think, again, if you're single, this is the best time to be selfish, because once you're in a committed relationship, it's not always smooth sailing. And I don't think that as soon as things get tough, you should just, okay, I'm out. It's important to work through things. And if you really care about someone, it can be challenging sometimes. And that's a time of your life when you might have to be less selfish. Okay, once you have kids, when do you have time to be selfish? When you are taking care of your children, okay? Thinking about the sacrifice that our parents, their time. My parents driving me half an hour to soccer practice, watching it. Like, it's crazy just thinking about once you have kids, like a lot of your selfishness or your time for selfishness is like very limited at that point, because you have to be there to show up for your kids. And of course you love them and you want to, but there is this part of you that changes, I think, and like life isn't the same after you have kids and after you are married and whatever that looks like. So I think really thinking about what it is you want to be selfish about and what it is that's important to you, discover it before it's, I don't want to say before it's too late, but I think being single is a great place to really lean into selfishness, because when you're older, you just have to think about other people's opinions, right? Not to say that you can never change ever again once you're married, no, but you have to kind of work as a community, as a team, to make those decisions together. Where you're going to live, what you're going to do, where you're going to travel. Like, all of these things are influenced by someone else. And I think that's beautiful and I think that's fine. But you have to, again, consider that, that is a way different stage of life than when you're single. All right, I want to shift and talk a little bit about the ego and selfishness. So I've been reading this book called Heal Your Wounds and Find Your True Self by Lise Bourbeau. And I'm reading it in French, so I'm going to try to kind of translate some stuff. But I liked the chapter where she kind of dives deeply into the ego. So our ego is like the voice in our head that's always telling us things and always kind of finding conflict and loves drama, okay? So essentially, a couple points from the book when she expands on is the fact that the ego really inflates our self-importance, and the ego wants everything to be about us. So the ego is, in that sense, very selfish, right? It could be the most little mundane things. The ego wants to make it a big deal, and it wants space to be important. So when I think about being selfish in terms of actively, consciously making choices for ourselves and thinking them through, and, I'm thinking of like the direction of our lives, etc. I think, those are things where we're consciously thinking about our motive. What do I want and why do I want this? And I think when we really consider the why, that can help us break free of this ego mentality where we really just focus on like everything's about us. It makes me think of an example. It's like thinking that everyone remembers what outfit you wore one night, or everyone will remember that you wore this shirt already if your outfit repeating. It's like the ego makes it seem like, everyone's going to notice because everyone was staring at you the first time. But we all are so self-absorbed and we all think things are about us, right? So it's just this over-importance. Like we make things, our ego makes things more important than they actually are. So I think it's important to be conscious of, again, our motive behind doing things and really think about it. Is it my ego driving me to do this? Is it something that's just going to make me look cool? Give me like 15 minutes of feeling awesome? Or is my motive that I really enjoy this thing, or it's really exciting to me, or I'm trying something new, whatever that looks like, right? So I kind of would say, are you driven by your ego or your higher self, right? And for me, when I think of the higher self, is like the best version of yourself. How would my highest self handle the situation versus how is my ego telling me I should be handling the situation? So I think when we're being selfish, we just need to be aware of what's driving these things, because I think being selfish in little moments, we sometimes forget to think about how things affect other people. And at the end of the day, our decisions do affect others, to an extent. And we should be mindful of how we show up for the people in our lives, because again, I would hate for my friends to think of me as super selfish. I think that would be a really sad realization of like, wait, am I not showing up for the people in my life? Do they not think that I care about them? But again, I want to be selfish in that I'm choosing the things that bring me happiness, and I'm choosing to show up as my best version of myself, right? And that to me is what positive selfishness looks like. So I guess overall, I would say it's important to advocate for your needs and really get clear on what it is that is really important to you, even in a friendship, in a partnership. You need to be able to communicate what you need from someone and get on the same page about things, right? I don't think partnership should always mean compromise. Sometimes it should be your way, and sometimes you will get the longer end of the stick. But I think it's knowing that it won't always be like that. And if you're always take, my needs first, is that actually going to be a successful partnership or relationship or friendship? I think it's also really important to think about other perspectives when making decisions. So asking yourself, is this something that's necessary? Is it kind? Am I just doing it because I have this need to feel right? This makes me think of when we are in a room or group and we're talking about something and we really feel like we want our opinion to be heard. And what happens is we kind of overstep, or maybe we cut someone off, or they misunderstand and we get frustrated. And it's like, okay, is it necessary for me to keep arguing? Is it selfish of me to need my point across? Is it something I can let go? And oftentimes I think, do all these people need to understand what I was saying perfectly? Probably not, right? And being able to let that go and say, okay, it's not the biggest deal. I don't need to be right. I can let someone else be right, or think that they're right, or please their own ego, right? So really thinking about, again, driving our motive behind making decisions and thinking about if it's necessary or if it's going to hurt someone's feelings. Thinking about even talking about certain things. Do I need to talk about this? Could it be harmful to someone? Maybe it's just not necessary and we should just drop it. I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I think I want to end off on the fact that I really believe it's okay to make a decision that's right for you, even if it means someone else will be sad, or even if you will be sad, because sometimes we need to make challenging decisions that are hard for us and we are still sad about it. And it doesn't mean it's not the right decision. So when you're thinking about selfishness, when you're thinking about what you need versus want, how you show up for other people, when is the best time of your life, or can you carve out moments of selfishness here and there so that you are able to live a full life and do the things you want to do, but also show up as an awesome friend, a compassionate partner, and just an awesome human? Because at the end of the day, we do not want to be me. It's all about me. Everyone else sucks and I don't care about anyone. I don't think any of us want that. We all want to build a community. We all want to have fun, loving friendships, relationships. So it really starts with how you show up for people, but also how you show up for yourself. And the better you show up for yourself in your own selfishness, the better you can also show up for others, because you're showing up refreshed and happy and excited for life. So I hope you were able to get something from this conversation. I have missed you guys. Please feel free to leave me a comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, and I will catch you very soon.